This is the real news. On Monday, a Baltimore court will hand down the first verdict in the Freddie Gray case. A judge, not jury, will decide if Officer Edward Nero is guilty of 4 counts: carrying out a second-degree assault, 2 counts of misconduct in office, and reckless endangerment. He was one of the bike officers that made the initial arrest of Freddie Gray. Gray died in police custody a year later. His death sparked mass protests and led to the indictment of 6 officers. We spoke to the head of the NAACP, a former city prosecutor, and attorney Warren Brown about the reactions to the testimony in today's final hearing.
My suspicions were confirmed in listening to what went on here today, and that is that the chief prosecutor made, quite frankly, a political decision to charge people, and then she worked back from that. It wasn't a case where they had the evidence and they worked forward to a position where they decided to charge someone. They decided to charge people and then work backwards to try to justify the charges. And of course, Nero and Miller had to be charged because the 2 of them and the lieutenant were the face of this whole Freddie Gray matter. And of course, they were white, and so so they had to be charged.
I respect the lawyers. I'm not a lawyer, I'm an advocate. So there's a different thought process. I just think that there's too much of African-American young boys and men getting stopped and getting hurt. Some of them get locked up and then it's not even really a true case. Now moving forward, if Freddie had not died and he did get taken to Central Booking, this would have been a case that would have been non-processed or dropped. So that's how dumb or foolish the case was in the first place. So I don't know, I'm not going to get into the wherefore, why all this happened as far as the cases coming to court. I don't think to me it's not political. I think there needs to be a time when justice is done across the whole United States. If we, all of us, if we look at the city in a whole, these things are not happening in non-black poor neighborhoods.
And I think to any listener, the judge clearly had significant problems with the assault charge. His question to them, quite frankly, was, so what you're saying is every time there's an absence of probable cause determination that there is an illegal act, that the officer therefore committed an assault.
Right. I think it's, and I've said this on record, I think it's a very uphill battle for the prosecution. I mean, it would not surprise me at all if all of the charges were found not guilty. It just based on the evidence. I mean, they're very novel theories. There are a lot of legal theories, but a lot of them are very novel in terms of the assault and the failing to seatbelt. And while the essence of the case was what happened, with respect to this officer only, was what happened a mere accident or was it criminal? And I don't believe that it was criminal.
And so we just heard Warren Brown say that this makes it clear that the indictments were politically motivated and that they shouldn't have been brought in the first place, and that these officers should not have been charged. How do you react to this kind of argument?
I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I do not agree with that. I think that my theory is that on May 1st of last year, when all 6 officers were charged, at that point, if you will recall, the state, Marilyn Mosby, there is questioning and talk about the knife that was found on Freddie Gray as being a legal knife. There has been no discussion in this trial about the knife. What I find and what I believe is that once the knife theory went away, and so therefore the stopping and the detaining, and I believe all of that was legal, that's when perhaps this officer and maybe Officer Miller's case should have been dismissed. I don't say that for the other officers because I sat through a lot of Officer Porter's case, and I think there was more than enough to convict in that case.
And during closing arguments, the state expressed frustration over the massive amount of arrests, 2/3 that don't end in charges being filed in Baltimore, predominantly African American men. And the judge, understood that, but said that's not the issue here. What are your thoughts about it?
No, that's not the evidence. I mean, the judge, whether it's a judge or a jury, they can only rule on what the evidence is in the case, what's been presented. We can't take in the universe and the world and what we know as basic knowledge of what happens in Baltimore City or what doesn't happen in Baltimore City. So that was correct.
And talk about the potential of this case to reshape policing if these officers are found guilty.
I think whether the officers are found guilty or they're found not guilty, I think that what this case will do and what this prosecutor, Marilyn Mosby, will have done is to bring attention and awareness to what is wrong with the Baltimore City Police Department. I mean, so out of it, regardless of how the verdicts shake out, I think the attention is going to be on Baltimore City police officers and what should and should not be done in the future.
And as a former prosecutor here, what changes do you think are necessary and you hope to see happen?
Well, I think starting with the premise of this particular case, which is based on general orders, and if the police officers that are on patrol, if they receive the general orders, there must be a better way for them to get for the officers to get the information so that they don't come before a court such as this court and say, oh, they may not have read it, there's no proof that they read it. I mean, that's starting with one. I think there has to be more hands-on with the officers vis-a-vis the issue that is in this particular case.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.